One of the obligations we've inherited in developing faith and becoming a disciple of Jesus is, on the one hand, that of preaching the message of the kingdom of heaven to everyone who will listen and ministering to those of diminished spirit. On the other hand, however, New Testament authors have indicated how much trouble our tongues can get us into regarding the amount and content. When preaching to others for the purposes of instruction or comfort, we need to be concerned with the amount of content of our message, in addition to the accuracy and audience we're addressing. First and foremost, we must know what we're talking about, no matter what we're talking about. Otherwise, we should probably just refrain from teaching Christian principles and simply discuss our experiences as a faithful Christian, or admit what we know and what we don't know right from the start. To impart a correct message, we must understand the message of the kingdom of heaven accurately. All of you should know by now what I understand to be true regarding the message, that we need to move above and beyond our faith development and attend to the will of God to the best of our ability and repent when we fail. I won't tell you what to preach. However, I understand my interpretation isn't the message being taught in the churches today. This doesn't mean that I've incorrectly interpreted the message. It just means that others may not have interpreted it correctly. In this dilemma, I'm in good company. During Jesus' ministry, he was also at odds with the faith leaders of the time. My interpretation reflects the message and behavior of Jesus. He not only demonstrated love to all those he interacted with, but he personally commanded us to love one another through acts of charity, mercy, forgiveness, and preaching. He also instructed the disciples and us over time that if we fail to demonstrate these qualities, then we'll fail to realize our hope. There's obviously much more to Jesus' story which may be told, but I believe we must include this message. This is the message of the kingdom of heaven, and we are obligated to preach it accurately. We must consider who we're addressing, the situation, and the environment we're in. Sometimes communication is more effective if we arrive at the message indirectly, so that our audience understands why the message is important to consider. If all we do is verbally instruct, then others may simply close themselves off. As the Bible indicates, we begin to sound like clanging cymbals. Sometimes the message is better taught through acts of charity, mercy, and forgiveness. Then when we're asked why we think we must do such things, we can explain to those around that our Father and Jesus desire us to demonstrate love to one another. And the best ways to demonstrate love is through these qualities. Whatever is needed by our brothers and sisters, that is what we should be providing. Then we can articulate the obligations that the faithful are expected to do to realize their hope. We must consider the age, maturity, developmental level, and preferred language of the audience. If we're addressing those around us in English and they only comprehend French, then how can we effectively preach the message of the kingdom of heaven? The same is true regarding the audience's ability to comprehend complex message. We must tailor our message to the comprehension level of our audience. If our audience is primarily of the age of majority, seemingly at a point of maturity of comprehending simple to moderate level messages, we still must consider the terms we use and the concepts we present. I've been studying message for decades now. I'm very familiar with the terms that New Testament authors use in their messaging. Although some passages, verse groupings, and chapters require more thought and work to understand fully, most are understandable. But over the centuries, the church and various leaders have introduced terms and phrases which are extra biblical and they like to use them in their sermons because the use of these terms and phrases make us feel biblically knowledgeable. We also may use them in preaching to our brothers and sisters on the street. I believe these kinds of discussions and the uses of complex terms and phrases are better used among these church leaders, elders, philosophers, and those who are intimately familiar with them. It is my contention that the use of such terms and phrases isn't a good idea in church sermons and street preaching meant for the layman. Although it may make the preacher sound like he's well versed in all things biblical, just like a clanging cymbal, if the audience isn't capable of understanding the language, terms, and phrases, then communication will not be effective, and the audience will simply shut down. We must preach the message of the kingdom of heaven in the language of people and at a level reflecting their age, maturity, and development. In considering the message of the kingdom of heaven, we must understand who's delivering the message to us. Although the books of the New Testament were probably written by many collaborators and simply attributed them to certain individuals, most of those involved probably possessed a limited education. They weren't the religious scholars of their time, philosophers, or well-educated people. They wrote in a way the people of their time can easily understand, even though it appears more complex to us today. The point of any important message is to accurately translate the message in a way the audience can understand, using simple, descriptive terms and phrases. For example, the terms ecclesiology, eschatology, apostolic, and ecumenical are easily understood if we do a little research. But just like anything we don't use often, their use will require us to think back and try to recall what the terms mean. And by the time we remember, the preacher is already 2 paragraphs beyond. Instead of using these terms, we should describe what we're referring to instead. Instead of using the term ecclesiology, why not just say something like, in considering the design of our church, we were forced to conduct research on historical churches, especially in the manner in which they were constructed and decorated. Instead of using the term eschatology, why not just say something like, although we're destined to live our lives on this earth, loving one another, our hope won't be realized until after we die, when we'll be judged by our Father in Jesus and granted access to the kingdom of heaven. I'm always thinking of the end game in whatever I do here on earth. Instead of using the term apostolic, why not just say something like, and according to the apostles of Jesus, as indicated by their written words of the New Testament? Instead of using the term ecumenical, why not just say something like, in an effort to unify the message of Jesus in the various churches of our region, a council was formed in which a member of each church region will participate. As I stated above, I've been researching the Bible for decades. I am very familiar with the terms and phrases used by the New Testament authors. Although I am well educated, admittedly, I am not the smartest person in the room. But I'm not the most ignorant either. And even I have trouble understanding the message when speakers use advanced, complex, and extra-biblical terms and phrases. We must remember the primary objective in communicating any message is to ensure the message received accurately reflects the message sent. If not, then what's the point?